sure this is the right one.
Ready for this, Mr. Ken?
So,
Okay, welcome back, everyone. If you could take your seats. Our final speaker of the day is a survivor in every sense of the word. At the age of 40, Ken Shapiro was diagnosed with and had to have surgery to remove a cerebral aneurysm. Following the operation, he suffered a brain hemorrhage and stroke. With a lovely wife and 2 young children at home, work to do, places to go, lengthy recovery wasn't exactly in the plan. With determination and more than a little humor, Ken has risen to the challenge of his recovery to help others work through his work with Brain Injury Voices, his blog, peer mentoring, and much more. Please welcome Ken Shapiro.
thanks, Jeannie. Now I've got nothing to talk about. I'm not sure if my mic is on yet. It is. Can everybody hear me okay? Yep. Can anybody hear me too well? Okay, good. I did forget something. I knew I would. My younger son, Gus, recommended that if I was nervous today, I should imagine the audience in their underwear. Some who adhere to strict brain theory might say that because I had a right side stroke that I no longer have the capacity to imagine such a thing. But fortunately, I have a backup plan that I've been using ever since I was a kid who was a bit of a literary magazine geek giving poetry readings. I would always take a picture of the audience before getting up on stage to put myself and the audience at ease. So everybody squeeze together. There we go. Good. That'll go in my scrapbook. Although I'm not here to talk about public speaking. In many ways, being up on this stage today is the culmination of a journey that began about 6 years ago with a speech exactly about that. Sorry, getting myself acquainted. So let's go back to May 2010. I was at Disney World at an employee recognition conference sponsored by my employer, a large disability insurance company, though I had very little understanding at the time of disability. I remember one of the motivational speakers citing a survey showing that people have a greater fear of public speaking than death. Back then, I generally would have agreed, though I didn't know how soon I would have the opportunity to confront that fear head on. Up until then, really the most death-defying moment in my life had been, let's go to this, tandem parasailing adventure my then new wife and I went on in the Caribbean. And happy 14th anniversary, Jamie. We made it this far. Just moments after this picture was taken, the rope holding the parachute jerked and snapped. I think I got a good sense. No, spoiler alert. I think my reaction at the time was a good indicator that I'm reasonably calm in a surreal crisis. I just said, we're just floating. While my wife took a contrary approach, which has been representative, and I know, very, very careful she's thinking, how I say this. 14 years has taught me that, at least. She subscribed to a contrary approach of anger and a desire to control the worst circumstances. In her head, she was battling imaginary sharks and building a hut on some island we were going to land on. But very gallantly insisted that I get onto the rescue boat first. But let's get back to now, because we should always be thinking about now. When I was kindly asked to speak today, it was in the context of providing a success story of a stroke survivor. That forced me to ask myself, am I a success? I even tried to find a formula and graph that, seeing if anybody's paying attention. So this graph is based on my incremental achievements over the years. And what I'd really like to talk about today, without getting too esoteric or philosophical, are the ways we define success, especially in the context of stroke and other brain injury recovery. I'm uncomfortable. Sorry, I am going to stick pretty close to my script much of the time today. I don't know if you know this, but I have a brain injury. I'm not really comfortable with traditional, somewhat absolute definitions of success, where more is better than less, fast is better than slow, 2 better than 1, rich than poor, etc. Binary views of the world don't really interest me anymore. There aren't only winners and losers, successes and failures, and the gray area between those extremes isn't filled by comparing yourself to others or even a previous incarnation of yourself. But personally defined progress versus shooting for perfection is a success I can get behind. That's why my graph will never cross 100%. Perfection is an illusion. Now, I know looking at other people's vacation pictures is never interesting, but I'd like to take you on a tour of my wonky brain and to some of the destinations it's taken me. My apologies to anyone with a weak stomach. Although fortunately, I am not a medical professional, but many of the doctors here today have shown some pretty unpalatable pictures of people's brains, but you ain't seen nothing yet. And keep in mind, this is my brain, so it's very personal to me. And I actually enjoy looking at these pictures and being reminded of the horrors I've weathered. But before I get to what I've been through and gained, I want to look at a bit of what I've lost. My stroke has primarily affected me on a physical left basis. I still suffer from left side hemiplegia, so I have limited use of my left arm and very little use of my left hand. So I want to take some glimpses at my vast physical prowess pre-stroke. So I have 2 videos which also demonstrate the loss that my family, and my kids especially, have had in losing an active father. Are you recording?
I think so.
This first one is from the winter of 2007.
Are you ready?
That's my oldest
Okay,
son.
Snow Angels, take 1.
Yes, Jamie, you are in the video. So it's a little bit hard to watch these videos now because
Can't really see the Snow Angel, but it's there.
I'd be able to do.
Hey, Wyatt, you want to try making a Snow Angel?
I don't know if I can turn the volume
Wanna
down.
I don't know.
Off, but I didn't get to the good part yet. This is the exciting moment.
Nice, Charlie's Angel. You gonna make a Snow Angel, why?
Yes.
So again, it's going to be a little hard to watch because it's shows me some of the things I'm unable to do now. I think it's also hard for my sons, especially my older son remembers me as the fastest man alive, chasing after him on foot while he rode his bike down their driveway for the first time. My
he's not whining anymore.
Has his own mourning process that he's gone through where he was only 3 when I had my stroke and doesn't quite recall what I was like before. So he'll watch things like this and ask, "Is that before you were slow? Or is that before your brain forgot how to work your left arm?" Okay, I've got one more, which I know people have been anticipating. And again, remember, this is me at my best. Well, in terms of physicality.
Good one. Try it again, sweetie. I want to back up. I didn't quite get the hula hoop.
Just a few months before my stroke. So my son Wyatt was about 5 years old.
Yeah. All right, one more time. I'm going to go on this angle.
Sorry, I wish I could fast forward.
You want to see?
Oh, no way.
Wait. Go ahead. Try one more time, Y. Yay! Okay, Dada, your turn. Actually, Ken is like the super duper hula hooper.
I was overselling
All right, go ahead, Y. Back off.
This reminds me why we should get the hula hoop out this
I
weekend.
can't get it to my neck from here. I know some people can,
I
but
think so.
I don't know. Hold on. No, don't come close.
Wait, where's Guy? Okay.
Yeah, wait. I'm just trying on my neck, but you have to back up. I think I know how to do this.
All right, hopefully.
Now, at this point, again, this was May 2010, I knew that since around the time
Wow,
of
go Dada.
our parasailing accident, I'd been experiencing very odd, brief, somewhat out-of-body
Wait, back up, Y.
episodes or spells that manifested mostly as unidentifiable Elvis Costello songs stuck in my head, and over time morphed into an equally unidentifiable clip from Star Trek: The Next Generation. The frustration of not being able to grasp the source of these phantom sounds and images caused me to write them off as anxiety attacks. Fortunately, in 2010, the episodes increased in frequency and added a genuine audio component, a ringing in my ear, which allowed me to finally go to my doctor and report something other than, "I'm having deja vu a few times a day." That confession at least led to an MRI, which identified the true cause. This is the image the MRI showed, identifying something suspicious in my right temporal lobe. In these images, left is right and right is left. My left hemisphere was described in the radiology report as unremarkable. I found that somewhat insulting, since my mother has always told me I have an exceptional mind. A consulting neurosurgeon immediately identified what to me was a remarkable interloper as a giant aneurysm. The white around it is swelling, and then you can see my unremarkable left hemisphere. Further testing showed how the giant aneurysm, which is technically anything over 2.5 centimeters in diameter, mine was 4 centimeters, and you can see it just in the upper left there. The white surrounding it is actually calcification, and what I always thought of as a second skull. The mass effect of the aneurysm had been benevolently talking to me, warning me through mild seizures, even though I would never have called them seizures. One of my neurologists suggested that the aneurysm had been tickling a memory, Why memories of Elvis Costello in Star Trek? I'll never know. Not so fun aneurysm facts. 1 in 50 people, about 2% of the population, has an unruptured aneurysm, 5 to 8% of which are giant. So that puts me in the 0.1 percentile. How's that for remarkable? So I would say I was very successful at growing my aneurysm. Luckily, because the aneurysm was so large and had been growing for so long, he was not considered emergent. Between June and September, I was fortunate enough to have time to get my affairs in order and spend quality time with my family. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. I was open to the universe. That was my mantra. But we had great family outings like this one at Willard Beach in South Portland. Again, it's a little hard for me to look at this now, knowing it would be inadvisable, if not impossible, for me to climb that rock. And also feeling a little bit sorry for that young guy who didn't know what he was in for. Gus, I'll take questions later. Thanks. That fair warning also gave me time to start my blog as a way of easily communicating news about my diagnosis. It also became a great mechanism for my wife to communicate medical updates, and ultimately a way for me to find my voice again and educate others about my experiences. While the MRI and the non-contrast CAT scan we've looked at identified the size and location of the problem, a better map was needed to actually plan for surgery. Thus, I had an angiogram. I have a video that gives a sense of the blood flow and the bubble in my brain, which was how I explained it to my kids. Hopefully, so you have to look closely, you'll be able to see that it's my skull revolving and the aneurysm right in the middle there. The angiogram also included crazy 3D renderings of my arteries and the aneurysm. I dubbed this one the squid. Once I selected my surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital, he requested a different kind of CAT scan with a contrast dye, delivering this plate of spaghetti. And up in the right, you can see a bunch of blood vessels that lead to my aneurysm. Again, I wanted the best map of my brain possible, but also knew that a certain amount would remain unknown until the doctor was actually in there. So I went to Boston in late September 2010, had surgery to clip and remove the squid, but then suffered a subarachnoid hemorrhage and a stroke. I don't know why it's subarachnoid hemorrhage. I mean, I know what the subarachnoid is, but why does it sound like under the spider? Why is there a spider in my brain? So this is a picture in early October of me pretty much at my worst. Due to the hemorrhage and swelling in my brain, a portion of my skull needed to be removed to relieve pressure. So a thumbs up was about as expressive as I could get at that time. There are differing opinions of when I first spoke. I thought pretty early on, but my wife insists that it was later and with a flat affect, which was hard to distinguish from my usual sarcasm. It was soon after this that I had the pleasure of being transferred to New England Rehab Hospital here in Portland to begin acute rehabilitation, or as I like to call it, adorable rehabilitation. Not surprisingly, when faced with a loss like this, the focus during early rehab is on reclaiming what we once had and were capable of. It's completely reasonable for patients and family and medical professionals to want to that return to normalcy. I remember being told by my doctor, Dr. Kazmi, thank you so much for everything you have done for me. But one of the things I remember him telling us was that progress of regaining use of my stroke-affected side would tend to plateau after about a year. Early on, that was a hopeful message. The procrastinator in me thought, I have plenty of time. However, that line in the sand also became a point of no return on the line between failure and success, and possibly a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. In the rehab, it was difficult seeing other patients who supposedly had suffered comparable injuries progressing faster than I was and being sent home. What was I doing wrong? Was I not working hard enough? Fortunately, I would find new ways of defining success. But back then, I was still in the mode, to paraphrase Stephen Colbert, of re-becoming the person I never wasn't. Now, with the advantage of years of hindsight, when I think about the goals of medical recovery, I now picture a sinking ship. As if floating a sunken vessel back to the surface of the water will restore it to its former glory. But that's simply not true. There's a lot more to it than that. Generally, we tend to think of success in terms of objective gains or relative comparisons to others in similar situations. Medical recovery is one of the few times that break-even is deemed a success. Early on in my recovery, the goals of reclaiming my former life were clear and defined, so it was easy enough to herald the success of returning home to my family and begin the process of transitioning back to work. This is a little bit spooky, but it happened to be Halloween of 2010, and a glimpse of what my head looked like after my craniotomy. Whoops. Now, knowing my kids were coming in for a visit that day, I requested my Superman t-shirt and underwear outside my Johnny pants, just as Superman would want it. And yes, I'm wearing that underwear today. And Superman socks, but I can't show you those. In November, I was allowed day passes on weekends, always sporting my fabulously decorated helmet when out of bed. My kids did a bang-up job on my helmet. I left foam butterflies all over the rehab. Also, while going inpatient therapy, also in November of that year, you can see here I'm wearing something called the BioNess, which use electrical stimulation to make my hand open and close. The lovely Chrisanna Greeley is unfortunately not in this picture. She's just somewhere off to the side, being encouraging. I can only control those electrical impulses now when I yawn, and I've yet to figure out how to voluntarily yawn and control my hand at the same time. My neurosurgeon, when I told him that, actually said, yeah, nobody knows what a yawn is. And I'm quite satisfied with that. I kind of like the fact that the brain is this mysterious object we keep stored in our heads. It's kind of magical. So soon after that, in November, I learned that my bone flap from my skull, which had been in cold storage at Mass General, had somehow gotten contaminated. So we were going to need an alternative way of putting my head back together. And that would come in the form of a 3D printed plastic bone flap. All we had to do was measure my inseam. So this is the CAT scan that did that. You can see where I was missing a part of my skull. You can also see a little bit of a glint from the titanium clips that were holding onto the ends of my aneurysm, or what was left of my aneurysm. And so I went back to Boston for my cranioplasty. So believe it or not, this is my head looking better. I then had the good fortune to return to a New England rehab and continue my inpatient therapy for another 2 weeks or so. I was there in all about 2 months. So this is the best video I could find of how I walked back then. And in the spirit of success and progress, I'll point out that while that wheelchair was mine at the time, and I went home without being approved to transfer myself from my wheelchair to a bed or toilet, I was at least walking with a quad cane and an AFO on my left leg, so that's an ankle foot orthotic. Now I have graduated to a straight cane and a knee ankle foot orthotic, a KAFO, which prevents my knee from hyperextending.
Yeah, he was going a little too fast for me this weekend.
I would like to do this in a very dramatic fashion with a Willy Wonka dive roll, but I don't have the grace or showmanship of a young Gene Wilder. So I'll just make my way back to the podium and show that I can Frankenstein my way on my own now. Honestly, it's a matter of mere practicality, and just to be able to carry something, say, from my kitchen to my family room has been a great stride, no pun intended. I also have a video of me learning to climb stairs again, except that's not it. And I do still put safety first and climb stairs this way, not with Shelley holding onto my pants, but a step at a time. If I'm feeling particularly energetic, which is rare, and confident, and have a strong handrail, I will do stairs reciprocally. But I still find this is slow and steady is the best way to go for me. Then so this again was about 2 weeks before I went home. In-home therapy cleared me to go upstairs in my house a week or two after I got home. So I had to continue making these incremental achievements. But I continued outpatient therapy at the rehab. This is an example of me using something called a sabo to exercise my left hand, use what little grip I had in my left hand to transfer these balled up pieces of paper.
Walking a few
I
months
still
back,
have
so actually it made me think that I
more
wanted
gross
to
motor movement in my arm. Ooh, look, I'm showing off. But my left hand really has very little grip. I get something called clonus, which is kind of what I think of as a feedback loop. My brain sending the signal to my left hand, and well, that's a good sign. There's the mouse. Yes, welcome back. What slide was I on? That is not my presentation. That is my presentation. Usually I get blamed for the technical errors. But we were there. All right. I also made a difficult choice around this time as I was approaching my 1-year anniversary, or anniversary as I'll often call it, to stop formal therapy and focus on teaching myself to do the best I could with my right hand alone. Just as they say other senses will often take over with the loss of one, it feels like my right hand now has the capability of at least two. Though I still try to find jobs for my left hand, like turning on and off wall light switches and holding my toothbrush when I put toothpaste on it. And with the completion of my formal therapy, I then began transitioning back to work at my former job. Oh, I'm not actually showing anything, sorry. There we go. My employer has been incredibly accommodating while just holding my position for me in the first place and offering me physical accommodations like a sit-stand station for my computer dictation software for when I'm not typing one-handed. But I could never pull off those heels. Soon after that, in September of 2011, New England Rehab was very kind to select me alongside other patients from the previous year with an award for exceeding expectations. I realized how low expectations can go a long way toward achieving success. Not dying apparently is a noteworthy achievement. I've been told more than once that my continued existence is a miracle. And you know what? I'll take it. Though surviving is easy, living is hard. That's why today's event is called Life After Stroke, not Surviving After Stroke. And the fun never ends. Then I moved on, just as Susie was talking about before this. I worked with her to have my car modified for one-handed driving. This is an example of what the spinner knob on my steering wheel looks like, so I can easily steer one-handed and control my turn signals and my driver's side window. Of course, my doctors have continued to monitor my brain for any changes. Generally, no news is good news. And things remain unremarkable except for things like this. The hockey mask in my head. As well as the titanium bobby pins. This is my most recent CAT scan, which shows the glint from those clips, as well as, well, you can see the portion of my skull that was pieced back in, and how, I think especially because it's plastic, it has not fused quite as well to my skull. Also, all that black is the stroke. The next picture is not of my brain, but rather the brain of some poor soul who didn't have the good fortune to have a cerebral hemorrhage while in the neuro ICU of a major metropolitan hospital. Again, I hope nobody has a weak stomach. I like this picture, if like is the right word, because it gives me some sense of what my brain may look like, and because it's a reminder that while brain injuries are invisible from plain sight and often masquerade as other injuries, like a bad leg, arm, or hand, they're also physical wounds. You can also see how common results of brain injury, like physical fatigue, can be caused by the considerable extra work our brains must do to route signals around damaged areas. Brain injuries also offer a unique healing opportunity that other types of injuries don't. The possibility of rebuilding oneself in an appropriate form, not simply recovering from what we once were. For example, I was never an avid biker previous to my stroke, but seeing the toll being sedentary was taking on my weight and an inability to be active was taking on my relationship with my sons, I tackled an online fundraising campaign to buy a recumbent tricycle, tricked out for one-handed steering and braking, and a strap to keep my left foot on the pedal. And Gus, you're going to actually ride with me this year, right? Thank you. I also found around this time Brain Injury Voices, where they found me, just in time to ride their coattails to the HAVE Award ceremony in Washington, D.C., a hospital award for volunteer excellence. Did I get that right, Carol? Voices has taught me how to use my experience to pay it forward. This is the scalpel I took in Senator Angus King's office during that trip. And it's been my pleasure to take my injury and turn it to something positive and be an advocate for brain injury rights. This next picture is a great example of the support my friends and family have given me. This is the aneurysm walk of 2014, where Slow and Steady lost the race by about an hour. Going just as slowly in 2015, I came in first with an hour head start. So you get what you ask for sometimes. Almost there. Over the past 6 years, I've been able to put regrets over lack of full recovery at rest and accept myself for the person I am now, letting go of the person I was then and not putting him on a pedestal. Accepting the challenge of my journey and growing into the person I am, not mourning the person I was, greatest achievement. Yes, I've been able to gradually return to work full-time in my previous job, return to driving, and from a strict loss-gain measure, reclaim the 30 to 40 pounds I lost in the hospital through a disciplined regimen of diet and exercise, where I define diet as denying myself nothing and exercise as every move I make as a vigorous activity. Some may see my left side controlling neuroplasticity as a regrettable failure, and my acceptance of my half-life to be a forfeit of sorts. Mind you, no one has ever actually said that to me, but there are remnants of my aneurysm that act as my own worst critic and self-doubt. But I've discovered that living in a sunken ship gives me a great purpose in helping others, also trying to explore their particular piece of the ocean floor. Success isn't defined by what you have or what you can do, but rather what you do with what you have. By that measure, I'm happy to believe I'm deservedly successful. I may not have raised the Titanic, but I'm certainly keeping my head above water. And I have one more slide, which is mostly for my kids, but I think an accurate scan of my brain today. And I have no idea how far over I've gone, if there's time for questions or not. Who's counting? Sure. Okay, great. Gus, you have a question? Yeah, that is not a question. Also not a question. Yeah, I'm sorry, Karen, I didn't do the full animation. Mm-hmm. Carol, you probably feel like you have a monkey in your brain sometimes, although it would knock you out if it actually clapped the symbols together. See, now I've left my cane over there. I have to walk back and get it. This happens all the time in our house, except we have so much wood that I can't find it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you all again for joining us today. I would like to ask that you all take a few minutes to fill out the evaluation form that was given to you at registration. That will help us improve future programs. We look forward to seeing you next year when we will have our 10th annual stroke conference. And we hope it will be bigger and better than ever before. Thanks, and have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you.